Hey, what's going on? This is DJ Sports. We're back again with another pod. I know it's been quite a while since our last one, so it's good to be back. We have a lot to get to, so much to talk about today. I have Reese and Shomik on the show. We're going to talk about the NBA playoffs, everything that's going on there. We're about to start the conference finals. The Heat Celtics series has already been underway, and the Western Conference finals have been set in what is a really surprise matchup. Before we do that, I would like to remind you guys about our socials. It's you can follow us on DJ Sports Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, DJ Sports Pod at gmail.com. You can that's our email. You can reach us at questions. And yeah, let's get to it. Let's get to the beer segment.
Let's do it.
So today I have Guinness, one of my favorites, a classic stout from Ireland. You know, it's something that I honestly, even if it's 12 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, I'll still crack open a Guinness just because that's how much I like it. That a lot of people disagree, but what are you gonna do? Reese, what do you got for us today?
It's called It's Avery Brewing Co. It's hazy-ish IPA. I'm trying to figure out where it's from, but I have no idea. So, and it's a new one. I've never tried it before. So,
Cool.
A little bit more research next time, Reese, please.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Oh,
Brewing Co.
wait, what did you say?
You were reading it as you were saying.
I think it was.
Avery Brewing Co. Yeah, I was. I just saw it's in like small little writing at the top. You guys can see that. I didn't see it earlier. Oh, Boulder, Colorado. There we go.
Wow.
That's fitting for this podcast.
Very relative. Yeah.
And for me, I've got, throwing it back to Ireland, I've got a
Nice.
whiskey. It's a nice bourbony kind of whiskey. It's solid. I wish I had a beer. I don't have beer right now in the house, so this will have to do.
Honestly, Shomik, I love that every single time you're on, you bring like a nice whiskey to the podcast. It's like a nice little spice up every time you're on it.
Yeah, I honestly wish I was drinking that right now.
This is why I'm uncomfortable with being on podcasts that are shared with the world, because it's like some potential employer is going to sit down and be like, man, this guy drinks whiskey on a Wednesday thing. Just talking to his friends.
That could get you the job at some places.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you thinking over there with your go-to beer? Are you gonna rate it, Dev?
Yeah, so I am a little biased,
Just a little bit.
This is just a little bit, but should I even rate it? Like, I don't even know if that's fair. I could rate it. So, I've always been a fan of stouts. And this is, a staple. I think it's like a solid 7.5.
7.5.
Mm-hmm.
For your go-to, I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Reese, what's your Avery Brewing Co. From somewhere in the world? Oh, from Boulder, Colorado. Sorry.
From Boulder, Colorado. Honestly, not a whole lot of flavor to it, but it's like hazy IPAs are normally like lighter and like easier to drink, like less bitter and stuff like that, and that's pretty much all it is. I'm gonna go with 6.7.
6.7, nice. Shomik, how about that whiskey over there?
Tullamore Dew is a favorite of mine, honestly, in the affordable category. It's definitely better than Jim Beam. I would place it above that, but I would place it right alongside Jameson. And I think both of those are in the shy 7 category. It's like, it's not the fanciest stuff, but it's really solid for what it is.
Okay, cool. I'll have to try it out. I'm a big fan of Jameson. So you said it's very similar?
Yeah, I mean, they're both Irish whiskeys, and I think Jameson's a little bit less. Jameson's a little bit, like, it tastes stronger. Like, it has more of a punchier finish, and this one's a little bit more muted, but smoother.
Okay, cool.
I've seen Tillamook a bunch, but I don't think I've ever had it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's jump right into it. We had the Nuggets Clippers game 7 yesterday, and what was a surprise that it even made 7 games. The Nuggets came back from 2 double-digit deficits in games 5 and 6, and in game 7 yesterday, I believe the Clippers were up by 12 in the third quarter, and then the Nuggets just went on a run, blew them out, shocked the world by knocking out the Clippers in the playoffs. And the Clippers yet again do not make the conference finals. 50 years in a row where they do not reach the conference finals. It's honestly hard to believe that a franchise can go that long without making the third round of the playoffs. Not even the finals, but the third round. And Shomik, so I'm gonna start with you. What happened, man?
Well, to start off, I'll say this: my bracket for this year's we're doing a pick'em challenge for all the listeners out there, and my bracket's busted as hell. I had I had Milwaukee and the Clippers making the finals, and I had Miami in the first round to Indiana in 7 games. So my bracket it's just done. It's one of those situations where I'm still not last place after the second round, but we all know I'm going to be last place because of the picks I just made. I just told you guys about. But in all of that misery and lack of basketball knowledge, I did pick the Clippers and the Nuggets to go 7 games.
Hey,
and
I
picked the Clippers out against the Nuggets. I believed in this Denver team all year. When they went the distance with Utah in the regular season, I knew in the bubble. I knew that they were going to be better against Utah than they seemed when they went down 3-1. And the same thing with the Clippers. The way the Nuggets played game 2, they had more of a handle than it seemed like after they went down 3-1. And so just on their end, like as everybody's saying, it starts with them. I think they're just like at the end of by the end of game 7, it was not a situation where the Clippers played themselves out of the game. The Nuggets went out and punched them in the throat and took that game. And another team, a worse team, wouldn't have been able to do that. Utah wouldn't have been able to do that. A lot of teams would have let the Clippers slink back into the game when they were trying to protect that lead, especially with Jokic on the bench starting the fourth. But I think we can start from there. I think the Clippers just were completely outmatched in terms of trying to slow down Jokic. As soon as he got the ball dumped to him by Murray after he rolled after setting a screen, the Clippers had one man down when they tried to trap Murray. And when Jokic was approaching inside the perimeter, they had no idea where he was going to pass it. He had 3 shooters, kind of shooters. Denver doesn't have great shooters, but he had 3 options on the wing, or he could take it into the paint, and the Clippers completely folded whenever that situation happened, and it cost them.
Yeah, so when I was watching the game, even though the Clippers were up, it felt to me that it was not looking good for them because every time Jokic shot the ball, they set the double, right? Jokic would pass out of it 90% of the time. And the Nuggets in the first half and like most of the third quarter, they were missing their shots, but you could really tell it was only a matter of time that Denver started hitting their shots. They weren't going to miss their shots the whole game. So once Denver started making their threes, you saw Jamal Murray hit threes, even Jeremy Grant, Gary Harris, who's coming back from an injury, they started hitting their shots and it was over. Reese, watching that game, how shocked were you just seeing what unfolded?
I mean, honestly, I've been kind of turned on to the Nuggets for a long time. I lived with a buddy who was from Denver, so he was a huge Nuggets fan, and I've been kind of paying attention to what's been going on over there. And I didn't think that they were going to be able to beat the Clippers, but everything that he always talked about with this team and like the core group that they had was about like the grit and stuff like that. He was like, oh dude, like they have heart and they have grit. And I think that was like, for me personally watching this series, I mean, obviously you guys have all of your like actual basketball analysis and stuff that I can't really provide, but I mean, just from like an outsider's perspective, watching how hard they played and like Jamal Murray especially just kind of like bursting onto the scene this entire postseason, not really bursting onto the scene, but becoming more of like a household name, it's just been like awesome to watch. I don't want to call them a Cinderella story because I always feel like that like diminishes the run a little bit and stuff like that, but yeah. For me it's been fun to appreciate them from that aspect. So
yeah, and it's kind of hard to call an NBA team a Cinderella story,
Exactly. And honestly, it's hard to call them a Cinderella story because I mean they've been a top team in the West like for a few years now, and they've been contenders and stuff, but I think that probably just goes back to Shomik's whole small market situation that we don't want to bring up on air.
And last year they were one game away from making the Western Conference Finals. They probably should have beat Portland that game. I believe they were up by 20 in Game 7.
And that being the whole, I mean, Jamal Murray was really, really focused on that and, like, you know, telling the city of Denver that they would redeem that and stuff like that. So I thought that whole aspect was just awesome. And honestly, I think for, like, at the end of it, everyone wants to focus on the Clippers, but it's like, dude, we've been focusing on the Clippers for an entire season and they just fucking shat the bed. I just want to give credit to the Nuggets and what they just accomplished. Because, I mean, they've been – for the entire playoffs, they've been, to me, one of the most exciting teams. So
yeah. So Shoaib, we had Reese give a credit to the Nuggets, and I think there's two sides to every coin. So how did the Clippers fall apart, and like who's to blame for this 3-1 collapse?
Yeah, well, so I mean, we have a friend of the pod, Bayan Mohammadi, and he sent some screenshots of texts that he'd been sending. And I get into it with Bayan a lot in our group text, but you have to give him credit for those takes that he had on the Clippers. It was really prescient because the Clippers didn't have a ball handler, they didn't have a facilitator, and they didn't have somebody who was comfortable without the ball being in their hands for an extended period of time. And how that manifested was basically Kawhi having to be the primary ball handler on every possession, and you could just see he was winded by the end of Game 7. He didn't have the legs in him when he was pulling up for threes that he normally would make. He was missing them, and when it came to Paul George, it's one of those situations where it's actually really like boring and annoying to talk about the whole Paul George situation, because at the end of the day, like sometimes you can talk about how teams, like I was just saying, like Denver outplayed the Clippers in so many ways, especially on offense. Like Denver's offense was so magnificent that you have to give them credit and their tactics and what they did. But with Paul George, the decision making that he exhibited in Game 7 and the other games was just so. It was just such an aberration from who he is that you kind of just have to shrug and be like, he choked. And it's boring to say that somebody choked, but he did. Like I think he wasn't somebody you could throw the ball to on the wing and he would create. He had tunnel vision, and when he got inside, he didn't know what he was doing. He had really bad kickouts. He had really bad turnovers. He had really bad spot up threes. And I think Kawhi found himself kind of flummoxed because there wasn't anybody to set him up in a good position. And guys like Lou Williams only function really well when there's already a really good unit on the floor that can move the ball and stretch the floor and create space for him to drive. And in a half-court setting where everyone was standing around, Lou was totally ineffective.
Right. And sorry, Reese, and that doesn't even mention his deficiencies on defense.
I was gonna say, like, how much of this goes on Doc at the end of the day too? Like, you guys, neither one of you guys have mentioned him at all.
I think he definitely has to shoulder some of the blame. I mean, you're the head coach. He's not actually out there playing the game, but you're up 3-1, and this is his third time that he's blown a 3-1 lead. So, I mean, he definitely has to answer some questions. Do I think he needs to be fired? No, probably not. But looking ahead to the Clippers, like, I think next year and the year after they'll be fine. They should be okay. But looking ahead to their future, they don't have a draft pick until 2027. It's really, really interesting in the sense like what their plan is gonna be, to be honest, and what Ballmer's gonna do.
I think that anytime you get to a place where there's like a kind of enormous crushing heartbreak like the Clippers just had, where you get bounced in a round you thought you would easily make it out of, and you just get sent home packing. You just look like punks, basically. Hopefully, come back on. Anytime you do that, I feel like everybody gets one more year, like a prove it year. The Pistons in 2007, when they completely lost their way against Cleveland and LeBron, they got a prove it year, and they came back and they took the Celtics to 6 and they lost. And that was kind of the year that Joe Dumars was like, all right, it's not going to work. the Clippers in 2015, when they blew the 3-1 lead to Houston in the second round, they came back the next year, and then Chris Paul and Blake Griffin both got hurt against Portland, and that was kind of the last year. 2017 they did it again, they got hurt again, but it was really over after 2016. You could just kind of see it in the 2016-17 season that they weren't necessarily a real contender anymore. And it might have been the case with Houston this year, where Houston had a real shot in 2018, but then 2019 was a really crushing defeat, where they really had a chance. In 2018, it was like they were overachieving and they lost. In 2019, it was like you have KD hurt and you have the Warriors looking a little bit shaky. That was their chance to strike. They didn't,
Right.
and then this year they get blown out again, and that was the end of D'Antoni and the Rockets. And so I think next year will be the Clippers' prove-it year, and they're either going to come back and Kawhi is going to be 2019 Kawhi, and Paul George is going to be 2019 Paul George, where he made first-team All-NBA and was an MVP candidate, and will replicate that in the playoffs this time, and Doc will be the coach he is. Or they're going to have another – wherever they lose, if they lose, it's going to be the end for Doc and the Clippers, I would say.
You think so? You think so let's say they lose in the conference finals next year, you think he's done?
If I'm Steve Ballmer, I can't fire him after this year because there's just too much history and context, and this is his first year with this roster. It's just not the right business move to fire him. But and I would never be Steve Ballmer because I hate having to be this kind of person making these decisions. I love Doc. But if next year he doesn't do it, like at some point you have to say, yeah, like this guy, like you have that prove it year after the crushing defeat. Like Avery Johnson wins Coach of the Year in 2006. Then they have the best record in the NBA 2007, and they lose to the Warriors in the first round. You can't fire a coach who just won 67 games, but you can fire him in 2008 when they lose. I think they lost to New Orleans, and it was like, okay, that's it for you. You know, at that point you have to say goodbye.
Right. Reese, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think your original question was that if they go to the conference finals. So if they take a step further and get that, long-awaited conference finals trip, I don't know how they fire Doc after going a step further than he's been. It's still, obviously, I think it's going to be championship or bust, Steve Ballmer, but it's going to be championship or bust with this team. So it has to end up with that. But, I mean, they technically got 3 years with Paul George and Kawhi, and I think as long as he can keep Doc around for those 3 years, then they'll try to make that happen, So, but I just think, obviously Kawhi and Paul George played like absolute dog shit, but this seems to be becoming a little, not a narrative with Doc, but it's part of his coaching pedigree now, these game sevens and stuff like that. So I just was curious to hear how much of it you guys felt actually, fell on his shoulders. But I mean, everything that you guys say, obviously, about Paul George and Kawhi and stuff like that, it's like, how many changes do they really need to make this offseason? Do they even really need to do anything this offseason? Or do they just come back, same team, and just admit that their superstars didn't show up and let's try again next year,
Well, I think it's a classic case of how talented they are, and versus who they actually need. Because I think Lou Williams is an extremely talented player, but he's probably not the right player for this roster, right? I mean, I was pointing it out in the group chat text of the day, for the listeners out there, my favorite NBA player right now is Kyle Lowry. I love that guy. But even besides that, I think the Clippers would have really benefited from a Kyle Lowry who could facilitate, who always plays with natural energy and would have injected that in a team that looked like just completely dead on arrival on a lot of these games. Not just in this series, but even in the Dallas series and even in the bubble. And even throughout the season when Kawhi and Paul George are taking so much time off, like you needed a guy who's a point guard who can kind of bring energy and take charges and pass the ball with intention and purpose, get the ball moving when it's not moving. And so if they can, obviously I don't think they'll ever get Kyle Lowry. I think Kyle Lowry's set where he is, hopefully. But if they can get somebody like that, then and move Lou Williams or move a real piece, maybe even a more talented piece for somebody they actually need, they're a different team next year, perhaps.
Right. Something that I don't like is that, Kawhi obviously, he deserves some of the blame, and I do agree that he looked tired. Um, but at the same time, it felt like he was carrying this Clipper team for the entire playoffs. I mean, you go back to the Mavs series, Paul George was struggling even back then. Kawhi was putting up great numbers, throughout that series. And I feel like Game 7 and Game 6 were probably like the only the two games that he struggled in. I know this is like a very pro Kawhi group, so I don't want to,
Yeah.
I don't want to just,
You're so lucky. You're so lucky you're doing this podcast with us, because even when you started saying that, anybody else, like almost anybody else in our 12 or 13 whatever person group text would have cut you off. You would.
I'm surprised we've gotten this far without absolutely I mean, I'm not, because it's us three, but we've gotten how far into this podcast without obliterating either of them? Just calmly saying that they didn't show up in the series.
Look, I think PG definitely deserves a lot of blame for sure. Kawhi,
they choked.
Yeah, they did choke. I think Kawhi just earned some benefit of the doubt. That's my opinion. He definitely he clearly has some like serious like debilitating injury where he can't commit to a full 82 game season plus playoffs, which is why he does load management. But I think he's earned some benefit of the doubt.
Can I say something about the people who do hate on Kawhi? And God, I hope our friends don't listen to this podcast, because we're gonna get some fucking hate for this. But like, if you're like, a lot of them are mad at Kawhi. They're like, oh, you should have stayed in Toronto, blah blah blah, right? So the only reason, like, if you're in Kawhi's position and you have the opportunity to stay in Toronto, you just won a championship there, they love you, they'll hail you as the king and stuff like that. Or you can go back home, but going back home to the Clippers isn't as, desirable of a team, desirable of a roster, Like, I don't get what's so wrong with him just saying like, hey, you guys aren't good enough, I'm not coming there. Get Paul George, get somebody better, and I'll come, and then making that happen, like, I get that they're like, I don't know. I get that they want to just shit on Kawhi for doing the same exact thing, but like, I don't know. I don't understand Bayern's hate and stuff like that, and like Christian's hate on Kawhi for doing what he did, especially at the end of the day.
A lot of it might have to do with the fact that he left Toronto and he chose the Clippers over the Lakers. I think that might be a part of it. But I mean, LeBron did do the same thing when he left Miami. Like, he told the Cavs, like, I want you to trade this pick, and I want you to get, somebody like Kevin Love, which they did. So it's not the first time that someone's done this,
If anyone in the league wants to shit on, say, an Anthony Davis or, say, LeBron James for basically for absolutely seeking out Los Angeles and stuff like that and not ending up on one of their teams, they have all of the ammunition that Bayern and them and I hate that we're saying Bayern and stuff, but that our friends have for hating Kawhi and Paul George, like, okay, I obviously understand that most of this comes from the fact that it's Lakers Clippers and stuff like that, but it just, I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
It's not just Bayern, let's be fair, it's also Christian.
And that's why I was like, I hate that I'm saying Bayern and them.
It's really just the two of them. But at the end of the day, when you really boil it down, like, what a player does to deserve hate is a really good conversation. It's fascinating. I think Dev's right when he says that a lot of the hate comes from the fact that Kawhi, kind of left the Lakers at the altar and chose the Clippers instead of coming to the Lakers. That's probably where a lot of this like jealousy and hate from not just the Lakers but also the rest of like a lot of the Lakers influenced social media. Really, that's where it kind of from, and it also that's where the hate comes against Paul George. I mean, the reason I've always hated free agency is that it's so arbitrary, versus drafting a player. Right, you draft a player and you foster them and you nurture them and they're yours. They're truly yours. But if Paul George had been like in the summer of 2018, if he'd been like, yeah, I'm choosing the Lakers, then it's him and it's LeBron and Paul George. And then last summer, Kawhi's like, I'm choosing the Lakers, and it's LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George. there wouldn't be there wouldn't be any hate toward either of them. Like they would be Lakers. They made the choice that whatever, they could spin it anywhere they want. The true, they weren't really built for it if they didn't choose the Lakers. All that stuff is just ridiculous. It's comic book nonsense, and I think that like hate is a really dumb thing. But at the end of the day, with Paul George, he had a bad year, and like I said, next year is going to be the year where he makes or breaks his legacy, so to speak. If they come back, just like with Russell Westbrook, Westbrook had his second and third and fourth chance, and then once you run out of goodwill, then there's no redeeming your kind of career at that point. And at the end of the day, like Paul George will have to make his legacy, but I don't actually necessarily see it as this like juggernaut of a team losing. And that's another thing that I would get a lot of backlash for. But Paul George was never a top 5 to 7 player in the way that LeBron, AD, and Kawhi most like definitely by consensus are, right? Like LeBron and AD are top 5 to 7 players, and so is Kawhi. I think that when two top 5 to 7 players team up on the same squad, they really are above reproach in a certain way. And if they lose, it's a huge upset. Like if anybody beats the Lakers from here on forth, it's a huge upset. And if they win, it's what they were supposed to do. And that's kind of the burden you take on when you have two of those kinds of guys on the same team. The Clippers were just there, but they were bubbling under that. And I think they were a very beatable team that people kind of talked themselves into because the defense, I suppose.
Right. And as Laker fans, it's really easy to like laugh at the Clippers right now. But, there's no reason that they shouldn't be back next season. Just looking at their roster, you still have those two guys and, probably the best bench and the best depth in the NBA. So, I mean, there's no reason, barring like a really shocking collapse or like where somebody wants out. They should be back next year, but, we'll see.
Right. It's not like a Westbrook situation where people are defending him, but there's something fundamentally wrong there that no one, especially not Westbrook, is going to address. There's nothing fundamentally broken about the Clippers, and there's nothing fundamentally broken about the way Paul George plays basketball either.
Right. So, Western Conference Finals, we have the Nuggets and the Lakers. This is I think a series that no one was expecting. The Lakers were 3-1 in the season series. The one loss coming in a game that LeBron James did not play. Two of the games were really close. One of the games Lakers won on the road was in overtime. So it should be a really fun series. I'm really curious to see how the Lakers are going to defend Jokic. Reese, I know you're a little biased, but how many games do you think this series is going to go?
Honestly, I don't know, because I don't want to write off the Nuggets, because I feel like it's just too easy to do that, and they've just been proving everybody wrong who have done that so far. So because of that, I want to say at least 6, but possibly 7. But I mean, it really comes down to Jokic and Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee, and this big game, which I'm really excited to watch. So you saw this, 3-ball that we've been, blessed to see since the Warriors and stuff like that. And now we're going to see a bunch of big men battle it out. So I'm pretty excited about that. But, I mean, truthfully, I don't see Denver going out easy. I think they're going to take at least 1. I wouldn't be surprised if it was 2. And if something, if Lakers don't show up one game, then, yeah, we're fucked. I don't want us to be put in any like Clippers situation where it actually gets pushed to Game 7 and anything happens. But because of that, Game 6 becomes our Game 7, and I think it'll get to a Game 6, and that's kind of what I'm worried about, is it'll get to that, and Murray's going to show up all series, and yeah, I think it just comes down to what Howard and JaVale McGee are able to do against, and obviously, I mean, we know Davis and James are going to show up, so. But what do you guys think, like, the actual key factors if the Nuggets are going to, like, pull this off are?
Show it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's funny because we have a guy like Gobert who's supposed to be the best defensive 5 in the NBA, and perhaps the best defender in the NBA individually. And Jokic in the bubble and in the playoffs just dominated Gobert, right? Like Gobert just couldn't slow him down. The Nuggets offense was just like magnificent again. In the 3 games they came back against Utah. And it's funny because when you think about just logically the way Anthony Davis defends, you're almost in the playoffs almost inclined to pick AD as a defender over Gobert because AD is an inside-out defender. He can guard up to the perimeter, and he can guard Jokic when Jokic gets the ball at the top of the key and neutralize Jokic's ability to get to the rim, which then makes it easier for everybody to cover all the wings and the corners and all these kinds of like the back cuts, all of these passes that Jokic has that he's able to get off all the time because he has the ability to score. If AD neutralizes that ability to score, it comes down to if Jokic can still get players the ball, and it's also like, Reese mentioned Howard and McGee. It's going to be – I'm really curious if the Lakers are – I feel like people who are smarter than I am about this stuff and have been paying more attention would know the answer, but I'm not sure if the Lakers are going to go big or small and if AD is going to play the 5. And if they're going to have AD kind of tire himself out taking Jokic in a man-on-man situation. So to answer your question, Dev, I will do the really safe thing and pick Lakers in 6. I'm starting to like my brain after 2 rounds of the playoffs. The Lakers have been the best team by a mile, by a mile. And if that continues, then the Lakers are winning the title this year. But you don't know. You really don't know until the round begins. And if the Nuggets offense is good in a way that the Lakers defense, how it's looked, isn't able to keep up with, then the Nuggets are going to give them a lot of problems.
Do you guys think it would be just out of the realm of possibility that they steal game 1? Because I could see it happening.
I think it's possible. I mean, we lost the last 2 game 1s.
Mm-hmm.
I
think they take it.
I feel like Nuggets, they should be tired though. So from game 7 series, but anything's possible.
Are they going to be tired or in a little bit of groove? Like I could see them getting tired at the end of our series, but coming out hot.
Yeah, it was funny because they seemed so winded at the end of the Utah series because that game was actually close and Utah was like a formidable opponent for them. But they just pad caked the Clippers so hard in game 7 and just dominated them that they seemed like they could go for another 10 or 15 minutes at the end of that game, at the end.
That's a good point. Yeah, I remember after that Utah game 7, they played the Clippers game 1 and the Clippers just blew them out. And you're like, okay, makes sense, grueling game 7 series. But, this Denver team just has so much fight, they never give up. Give them all the credit in the world.
I think they have a chance to steal game 1 or game 2 because that's going to be before the Lakers make adjustments and figure out how to defend them. The Lakers, when they figured out how to defend Houston, and this might be because of Houston's mental toughness, but as soon as the Lakers figured out how to defend them, Houston just completely folded and crumbled. Like it was like a kid throwing a huge punch at a bigger kid, and the punch lands, and then the kid, like, it looks like the kid's gonna win the fight. Then the bigger kid punches back, and the little kid just apparently didn't ever figure that the big kid was gonna punch them back, and that's game over for the little kid. You know what I mean? there's no next step there, and that's what happened to the Rockets. And I think Nuggets are just a much better, more resilient team, so they'll be able to keep up better when the Lakers do swarm them the way they've swarmed other teams this playoffs. But let's see how it goes.
Yeah. Let's switch gears to the Eastern Conference. We have the Heat, Celtics. The Heat pulled out game 1 in overtime thanks to Bam Adebayo with one of the best blocks that you'll ever see on Jason Tatum. I'm really looking forward to seeing the rest of this series because it's 2 very evenly matched teams, in my opinion. You have 2 great coaches who just play great basketball. Reese, what do you think so far of this series and from game 1?
I mean, from an outsider's perspective, again, just tuning in for some good basketball, this series is given us everything we want. I think, especially being robbed of the Battle of LA and stuff like that, this one, hopefully going to 7 games, it's going to be just everything we wanted for like playoff bubble basketball. Kind of like you said, it's just going to be good, solid basketball, good coaching, just good all around play and stuff like that. So, but what I'm most excited to see is, and you kind of already mentioned it, is these guys on, like, we've known about the Celtics and these young stars that they've had, like Jason Tatum and stuff like that. And there's the whole storyline of like them emerging and them taking off in these Eastern Conference Finals. But I'm excited about the Heat and like all these like no-name guys that they've had like all season who have just been emerging out of nowhere. And like, I mean, what did they say? Like Tyler Hero or whatever, he's 20 years old playing in an Eastern Conference Finals right now. Like, that's just, I don't know. I just think the fact that all these like no-name guys, not no-name guys, I feel bad calling them that, but not household names for casual NBA fans like me, it provides like a really cool opportunity, and especially with like a really good core around them and stuff like that, for them to like really emerge onto the scene. And I'm excited for that. I geek out about that when it comes to like tuning into playoff basketball and stuff. So.
Yeah, that Heat team is so unique in the sense that like you said, they really are just a bunch of guys that were kind of not considered. You look at, Jimmy Butler, came out of Marquette, wasn't highly touted at all, a second-round pick, I believe, right? Duncan Robinson came from a D3 college. Tyler Hero, I don't think anybody thought he was going to be this good. Goran Dragic, I mean, he's had a pretty nice career, but he's kind of like a forgotten veteran. Nobody thought Bam would be this good. And then even looking at Eric Spoelstra, like, didn't he start off as like the Heat's like video coordinator or something? So it's a really, really unique and like a really easy team to get behind for sure.
Yeah. If you showed me this roster at the start of the season and you said, hey, these guys are going to be fighting to, play in the NBA Finals, I wouldn't have put money on it, I don't think I would have put $100 on that, but I mean, it's exciting. And like you guys said, I mean, I think all around this series is just going to be fantastic. But
yeah, Shomik, what do you think about it, the Heat Celtics?
I mean, to literally illustrate Reese's point, I thought TJ Warren's hot hand would be enough to for the Pacers to beat them in the first round. So, man, just like I don't even deserve to be here, honestly, after that, after a select. But I thought I was going against the grain too, because all the ESPN experts picked Miami in that Indy series. But I think that Game 1 was perfect basketball. Like, it was just beautiful, just beautiful. This series is going to produce a game that's going to be on during a Saturday afternoon on NBA TV at Hardwood Classics, like in 6 years, because it's going to go to double overtime, and Jimmy is going to play incredible and get like 43 or 46, and Tatum's going to have his like superstar moment. It's going to be an amazing series. I think Boston, even after Game 1, I think Boston has more firepower. I think Miami just played just with way more confidence, first of all, and second of all, with just a much better buckets getting mentality, whereas Boston was still a little bit system based, which you admire about Boston because Brad Stevens coaches them so well. They stick to their system no matter what. I mean, Kemba can score in isolation, and he had that step back, and Tatum is obviously like really, really good in isolation, but they haven't leaned on it yet. They're still kind of moving the ball, and Miami is just plays in this kind of such an aggressive fashion. Bluntly, is that they just could take that game in overtime. Like in 5 minutes, I'm not sure that I would take any team over the Miami Heat, in 5 minutes of basketball.
Right.
But I think over the course of the series, I think the Celtics have too many weapons and they'll wear Miami down.
Yeah, as much as a Laker fan, I'd like the Celtics to lose. I have the Celtics winning in 7. I just think that, yeah, like you said, they have so much talent, and talent usually wins out in the NBA. Not in the Clippers scenario, but I think they'll be able to take care of business, and there'll be a game or two where I think the Heat just won't be able to get those clutch baskets, and the Celtics. The defense is really good too, so but it should be a really exciting series.
Yeah, I think it'll go 7-2. I think I'm reluctantly picking Celtics in 7. like I reluctantly picked the Lakers in 6. This is like just a nightmare season to watch at the best.
Can't we all just get happy about a Lakers Celtics finals though? It just feels like in such a crazy year, like all is right in the world to see Lakers and Celtics battling out for the Larry O'B, you know?
Yeah, and
this is why I drink whiskey, because it takes like that.
I was saying that just so that you could say something back, but he just chugs his whiskey.
And to make it a little spicier, if we were to get Lakers Celtics, Lakers have 16 titles, Celtics have 17. So if we beat them, we'd be tying them for total titles, which adds a little something extra.
Yikes.
Let me ask you guys this. Do you guys think that the Western Conference Finals, even though the Clippers didn't make it, is the NBA Finals?
No, I do not. I think if the Clippers made it, then yeah, sure, you could say like they've been the 2 best teams, aside from Milwaukee, the whole season. But I mean, I think that's disrespecting Boston and Miami because they're 2 great teams as well. And, I'm sure Boston and Miami would both give Nuggets a hard time. So, no, I would say the NBA Finals will be the NBA Finals this year.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen from the past that anything can happen in that series. So, even if it was Clippers, Lakers, like I think that was just the media wanting to hype up the battle. Yeah, hype up the Battle of LA even more. So, which even, yeah. This is all the media's fault, by the way. This is 110% the media's fault.
I wonder if we'll ever get the Battle of LA, or if we'll at least get it in this era, because it could pretty well happen. That might have been our only chance next year. The Lakers and the Clippers, as they say in tennis, could be in different halves of the bracket, where the Lakers are an odd seed and the Clippers are or that's not how it works, but like the Clippers are in the 1, 4, 5, 8. And then the Lakers are in the 2, 3, 6, 7. And we might never get it in this era. This might have been our best chance.
I think if we don't get it next year or the year after that, it probably won't happen. Next year's probably our best bet.
I think if the Clippers finally make it to a conference finals and it happens in this era, like it has to happen against the Lakers. Like even as a basketball fan, I know Shomek, like you would love another team there and stuff like that. But just for the story, like it would have to be the Battle of LA,
It's how it works. I mean, the Thunder and the Rockets just had to play each other the year after that trade. It's always how it happens. And I'm not even calling it scripted. I think it's just how life works out, honestly. Shiv and I always matched up twice against, or at least in the heyday of our rivalry, we're always matched up twice against each other in fantasy football. And that wasn't Yahoo algorithm. That was God.
Are you sure that wasn't Commissioner just kind of tweaking some things here and there?
It was. I never give myself 2 matchups against Shiv. I can't do that.
That's so funny. You said in the heyday of our rivalry.
So that was a great segue. Fantasy. We're gonna jump right into the NFL. So what we're going to do, we're talking about the big week 1 storylines because the NFL just started Sunday, thankfully. I think we were all happy to have football back. We didn't even know if it was going to happen with everything that's going on this year. They look a little shaky. So what we're going to do, we're talking about the big week 1 storylines, and then we're going to do a quick fantasy check-in where we each talk about how our teams are doing. So I think the biggest storyline for me was definitely Tom Brady on his new team playing against one of the best teams in the league in the New Orleans Saints in the Superdome. The Saints won pretty handily. The score made the game look a little closer than it was, but I think they were in the driver's seat the entire time. Reese, what were your first thoughts of just seeing Brady on the Buccaneers?
I mean, it actually wasn't – I think they eased us into it by having him wear white, which I was thankful for. He wasn't in that home jersey. But it wasn't as weird as I thought it was going to be. But I think Tom Brady not looking good week 1 was what threw me off, like the pick 6, just everything that went on. It was just like it wasn't the Tom Brady that we're used to. And I know people are like, you could probably go back and you can show me 15 week 1s that he's played abysmally worse than this and stuff like that. But people are gonna hop on Tom Brady looking bad, not under Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels, and it's week 1 and he looked awful. So I think that he's got a lot to prove. We've known that he's got a lot to prove, but especially coming off of a performance like that where he wasn't like he was just average, he was just bang average, and he wasn't TB12. So I think there's obviously 16 more weeks left, so we got a lot of time to figure things out, but it's going to be interesting if Tom Brady plays even close to how he looked, and that defense. Can we talk about that defense at some point, because that was atrocious.
Are you talking about the Bucs defense?
Yeah, that was like everyone was so excited about them being Super Bowl favorites because Tom Brady coming to that defense and stuff like that, and him with all those weapons, and they give up 43 points. So I know it was Drew Brees, but still.
Right. So I actually thought Brady looked, obviously not the Brady that we know, but I think he made some good throws. He had a couple of great balls to Chris Godwin, and a really, really nice deep pass to Scotty Miller. But yeah, it was clear that, I don't know if he was rusty, but, they're definitely a team that is definitely, negatively affected by having no preseason, a shortened training camp. You're going to have some chemistry issues with the new team, so I think that's a given. I think the offense looked okay for the most part. I think Godwin's going to have a bigger role. Mike Evans was also banged up too. He caught a touchdown pass, but he's had some hamstring problems. So I think, this might be too premature, but they should be a playoff team, in my opinion. And in regards to the defense, I think the secondary was terrible. I have Jared Cook in my fantasy team, and there's no reason he should be catching like 30-yard bombs. That's not why I drafted him, but I'm definitely I'll take that any day. But I think the run defense was actually pretty solid. They gave Kamara a lot of problems. You look at his stat line. Kamara had 2 touchdowns, but he didn't really break off any big runs. So I think that's a positive in that direction. I also think they're going to get Leonard Fournette more involved. Once he gets more acclimated to his role. I believe he's a better runner than Ronald Jones, but I know Bruce Arians likes Ronald Jones. It's week 1. There's still a lot of games left to play.
It's nowhere near time to worry about anything going on down there, especially because, like you said, the lack of preseason. But it's just going to be like everything with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick in New England was like how they rebounded to losses like this. So I'm just excited to see how they come out week 2.
Shomek, you had something to add?
Wow. Reese offered some great measured analysis there, and so did you, Dev. And I'm going to come in with like a little hot take, big question type of something to like kind of put across the little ticker at the bottom. Like I think it's called the Chiron. On ESPN. But let me ask you guys this: after 1 week of football, could this be a Jordan on the Wizards situation for Tom Brady?
That's what I'm saying. Like with week 1 and with how quickly the media and stupid podcasts like ours are going to want to jump on these damn storylines, it's like it's a big red flag for me. That's all I'm saying. Dev, your point was that he made some good throws, and it's like, the second he stops making good throws, he should just sit down and fucking retire, and we know he's not there yet, but I'm afraid that this entire Buccaneers career is going to be like flashes of the old Tom and what could have been.
Nothing close. And
a
lot of people, I will say this, a lot of people are going to, compare Brady and Belichick, like, he needed Belichick, and I think it's not fair to Tom Brady to do that because he's 43 years old. He's not in the prime of his career. So to compare him, to the 16-0 season, to what he's accomplished in the past, which is so much, I don't think that's fair. I think, obviously, people are gonna have their hot takes and be ready to, it was always Belichick who, he was just a system. He was the guy. Belichick was the reason he's so successful. But I don't think it's fair to look at a 43-year-old quarterback and be like, this is you're supposed to play like your prime Tom Brady. I don't think that's a smart analysis.
At the same time, the trouble with quarterbacks So, I mean, to relate it back to the NBA again, because that's all I'm here to do right now, is with the NBA, you can retire gracefully no matter who you are, as long as you kind of scale back your own role. So, like Kobe Bryant, retired with like a lot of bombast because he was still taking 30 shots a game. But somebody like Dirk or Duncan retired with a lot of grace because they naturally receded their role over time. When you're a quarterback, you can't do that. If you can't retire, you can't be like Dirk in your last season, because if you are, it's going to be really unhappy and not fun for everybody. It's just going to be super ugly. It's just like Dirk could just come in and be like, "Hey, there's Dirk," and then he would kind of he would brick a bunch of shots, but he would hit one fadeaway a game, and everybody got up and cheered because it was Dirk. We all love Dirk. We don't care what happens. We have Luka. But with Brady, if he's just throwing bad passes all game and he gets off one good pass, it's just no one's still tuned in. It's like it's just ugly sports, and it's bad for ratings. It's really bad.
I think that's a good point, Shelvick. And yeah, speaking of that last Kobe season, that's something I kind of block out of my memory. Besides the last game, because it was really ugly basketball. But yeah, like when you're the quarterback, the ball is in your hands every play. Like everyone's counting on you, no matter how old you are. You're in that role, you're in that position. So I think that's a good point. Let's switch gears to another quarterback people washed up and had for dead. Aaron Rodgers absolutely shredded the Vikings for 4 touchdowns and 340 yards. He looked, as good as ever. Some of his receivers actually had some drop passes. Otherwise, he could have an even bigger day. Reese, were you able to catch some of that? And what are your thoughts on A-Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially coming off the off season and with the draft being such a big moment for all of us sports fans and stuff like that, the whole just everything that went on with the Packers this off season, that's all we wanted to watch was, how's this team going to perform and stuff like that, and is this going to lead to Aaron Rodgers playing in a new uniform? And he answers that week 1 by saying fuck you guys, I'm not done yet. It's that's basically just I don't know, it was just it's just Stephen A. Smith's just that bad man gif, or gif, yeah. Or it's just, I don't know. I feel like I can't even say anything about it because I'm still bless you, Showman. I'm still speechless about everything that he did that game, because that was with the entire script of he has no weapons. They gave him no help. He's still dealing with the same bums that he used to deal with, and he does the same Aaron Rodgers things that that he did when he was an MVP and a Super Bowl winner with these guys.
And I should add that this is on the road on what's supposed to be a very good Vikings defense.
To walk in on week 1 and win a division road on the game and win it by putting up 43 freaking points, that's incredible. Yeah, more than a message. Yeah. That should put the league on notice.
I was honestly surprised to see so many people say oh, the division is so wide open. The Lions might be a sneaky pick, or I was this team. Yeah, sure they weren't the greatest 13-3 team, but I mean, they were 13-3. And LaFleur hasn't lost a single division game as a Packers head coach. So
this team was a win away from the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
I think people just want to throw dirt on this team. It's I guess fun to look at their mistakes and be like, hey, look at these guys. But as long as Aaron Rodgers is there, clearly he's gonna have something to say.
Yeah, would you say Aaron Rodgers is your favorite player right now in the NFL?
Yeah, favorite non-Rams player, I would say. Because I'm biased. Aaron Donald is still on my team.
Right.
I'm watching that guy play. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers for sure. He's honest. He's one of the reasons why over the last 10 years why I'm such a big fan of football, I would say. Yeah, speaking of the Rams though, they went on the road. Not on the road, sorry. The Cowboys came into the new SoFi Stadium, beautiful stadium by the way, and the Rams took care of business in what was a really close game and beat the Cowboys. I was honestly a little skeptical on how we were going to look because we lost a lot of key pieces. And the Cowboys had a lot of hype coming in. They had a very high-powered offense, but I have to say, I was really happy with what I saw. Our running game was excellent. The line looked great. Defense did its job. Only held the Cowboys to 17 points. I'm biased, but yeah, you guys have anything to add from that Sunday night game?
How about the jerseys?
The jerseys. If we played like a 7 or 8 out of 10, the jerseys are like a 4 or 5.
Okay, all right, that's fair. Because honestly, I kind of like the jerseys. I thought.
I don't mind the gray ones; those are okay. The blue ones are actually pretty nice. The helmets are actually cool, but the logo is like a -5 out of 10. So
Yeah, I'm not crazy about the logo, and I'm also not crazy about them switching up the logo so quickly, but I think they can improve that. And with the colors and like the vibe that they were going with, I actually kind of like fucked with it. But that's besides the point. Like this team has, I don't want to say high expectations coming off of the year that they had, but people are expecting them to like be a high-powered offense that they were a couple years ago, right? Do you think like, especially with like the running back situation and stuff like that, do you think they can actually like live up to the hype with that? Like, do you think this offense can actually be like at least like a top 15 offense?
I think top 15 is definitely manageable. You know, that team with Todd Gurley in his prime, that was one of the best offenses I think we've seen in the last couple of years. So no, I don't know if we're gonna reach those heights, but I think we could definitely absolutely be a playoff team. We have a lot of great pieces. Our secondary, with Jalen Ramsey looks a lot better. We still have Aaron Donald and a good defensive line. But yeah, I think we're gonna surprise some people because we do have talent at every position. And McVay, I think he has a lot to prove this year. A lot of people, you know, after last season, were saying he's a 1-year wonder. They gave Jared Goff such a big contract, Gurley such a big contract, but I think we should definitely be a playoff team.
I'd love to see them come out. Like honestly, I think personally, I think the Seahawks are going to be too tough this year, and I think that they'll probably win the West. But I think the Rams can come in behind them, second place. And
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how the Niners do. That the whole division is going to be a bloodbath.
yeah, I don't know about the Niners this year, man. I just don't think that defense is going to be as
As good as last year.
yeah, and not even as good, but because they weren't just good last year, like they were so influential in every single game. Like that was one of those defense that was completely dictating the outcome of every single game that they played in. And I think that they'll probably be good this year. They'll probably be solid. Like there's not going to be a whole lot of things that we can say against them, but we're not going to be watching them and they're just going to be completely wrecking the game plan.
Right.
It's not
And
going to be that kind of situation.
they're already dealing with a ton of injuries.
Injuries, yeah. Can Jimmy G play well? It's like they got so many question marks, even coming off of a Super Bowl appearance. So I don't know. I'm worried about them, and if somebody's going to take over for them, yeah, I like the Rams, especially in a division where all of those divisional games can go any which way.
So Reese, watching the Cowboys, the NFC East, do you think it's wide open, or do you think it's the Cowboys for taking, or you see like the Eagles or somebody coming up?
I like the Cowboys coming in, and nothing about that game made me like change my mind. Like I know it went the way that it went, but like I just think Dak, like for me personally, what stood out about that game was like the weapons that Dak's gonna have. It felt like every single play there was just someone new that he could go to and stuff like that. And I know that's all we were talking about all off season, so that's probably boring to hear right now, but that could really, like, especially in a contract year, like coming off like all of the storylines that he had and stuff. I think that really could be game changing for a team that usually has a good defense and coming in with, as we know, a really solid coach. As long as they can get over like the little getting to know each other and, getting under Mike McCarthy and stuff, I think they'll be solid. And I don't like anybody else in that division enough to say that they'll take it. So.
Yeah, I mean, the Washington football team had one of the biggest upsets of the weekend, beating the Eagles. Looks like the Eagles are going to deal with more problems with injuries and just a lack of chemistry. It feels like they just haven't been playing with confidence.
Who are the Eagles? Like one of those teams where they just went to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl and stuff like that, and they have talent every damn year. But it's just something else that gets in the way that they're just like disappointing, Like, what team is that in the NBA that just freaking blows it every damn year?
Maybe the Rockets.
The Rockets. That's a good one actually. I like that.
Yeah, the Rockets if they had actually won.
Yeah, if they won the Super Bowl.
The same year too that the Eagles actually did win it. That was Houston's year to win it. We can just all pretend 10 years from now the 2018 Rockets actually won the championship.
Yeah, right. It fits our narrative for sure.
Let's head over to the AFC. I think the biggest headline from there was how Cam looked against the Miami Dolphins. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, I believe, in what was an easy win for the Patriots. I think it's kind of hard to judge, when you're playing against the Dolphins. No disrespect to them, but what did you guys think of Cam's first game as a New England Patriot?
I mean, like, again, I felt like everyone, I think Bayern was kind of going for the Patriots and stuff like that, but people so quickly, especially our friends, wanted to like write off the Patriots. But we're talking about Cam Newton, one of the most just absurd talents and weapons that we've seen at the quarterback position, other than a Pat Mahomes and a Lamar Jackson. Like over the last 5 years, we haven't seen someone like that at the quarterback position. And you talk about him teaming up with one of the greatest coaches of all time and one of the greatest offensive coordinators of our generation. And everyone was like, yeah, Patriots are going to suck this year. It's like, I didn't understand that at all. I know that they lost a lot of pieces, but I mean, they sought out Cam for a reason. They signed him for a reason. Like Bill obviously thought that was going to work, and he obviously thought that he can do something with that. So I'm not surprised at all that it went the way it went, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if they win the AFC East and we're seeing them in the playoffs again. It's like, I mean, who in that division is going to like do anything more than what we just saw with Bill Belichick and the Patriots and Cam Newton doing what he did?
Yeah, I would say Buffalo's the only team that's going to give him a fight. They have a really young and interesting squad, I think, and I think Josh Allen should take a leap this year.
So with that being said, like you look at the Patriots last year, right? Tom Brady and the Patriots last year, and they took a step down, right? We're all agreeing that they take a step down with Cam Newton. Everyone thought that it was going to be a giant freaking leap. We're all saying that it's just going to be a little bit. And it's like, how much better did the Bills really get this year? Like I know that they added Stephon Diggs, and I know that they have a few pieces on that team, but like, I'm not ready to say that the Bills are better than the Patriots. I'm not ready to say that a Buffalo Bills squad can walk into New England in a divisional game that could mean everything and steal a dub right now,
Okay. Interesting.
But they're obviously still like the team to talk about when talking about winning this division, other than Patriots. So
yeah. I'm a fan of that Buffalo team, especially that defense. I think they're a year, just a year of more experience. Stephon Diggs, like you mentioned, and they have 2 running backs, Singletary and Zach Moss, who they should have an excellent running game along with Josh Allen on the ground. So, I'm really curious to see it. I think it's all gonna depend on how Josh Allen has advanced as a passer, and just a quarterback in general. Can he lead that team to a division win? If there's a year where the Bills are going to win the division, I think it's this year.
I think he's become, and I have him. I was really high on him as a fantasy quarterback this year, so I was really paying attention to him week 1, especially since we didn't get to see any preseason and stuff. And him as a game manager, he looks a lot better. Like he was a lot better about okay, I know he gave up a fumble and stuff like that, but he was a lot better about protecting the football in the sense that like yes, I'm a mobile quarterback, but I don't need to push it every single time. You know, like I can get down here, I can run out of bounds here, I can throw the ball away here, you know, and I just think personally, I think he's going to take a step up. The only thing of that team that I think really gets better this year is Josh Allen takes like a massive leap forward as a quarterback, which could be the difference, you know, but I don't know, man. I'm not ready to write off Patriots.
I feel it. I mean, I totally understand why you wouldn't.
Yeah.
I'm just, you know, the receivers that the Patriots have, you know, and that running game, it's all really going to depend on how much Cam can really carry that offense, in my opinion, because, you know, the running game doesn't really scare me at all, and like the receivers definitely don't scare me. You have, you know, Julian Edelman, who's definitely towards the end of his career. He even had like some injury on Sunday, so it's going to be that defense and Cam. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how that division settles.
Yeah. No, I mean, if we revisit this conversation, which I'm sure we will, you know, middle of the season and stuff, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about Bills being first place and, you know, what the Patriots can do to get that back. So,
Right.
And I would love to see it. I mean, shit. I'm a freaking Broncos fan. I'm sick of seeing the Patriots on top. So if a team like the Bills can step in and start stealing the show, I would love to see it. So
For sure. So we had the Cleveland Browns get blown out again by the Ravens. Just another piss poor performance. Show me, were you able to catch that game? Do you have any thoughts on the Browns as of right now?
I don't. I actually didn't catch that game. I like I said, I watched the Lions play and I watched the Monday night game. But yeah, I can't. How did the Browns? I'm curious to hear you guys discuss the Browns because I don't know. I want to hear how they did.
Guess, bro. It's fucking Cleveland.
I think the score was 31-6.
It's the fucking Browns, bro.
So Baker is. I mean, did he do well at least? Did you say 6? Did you say 30-something to 6?
31-6.
Baker threw the first interception in the NFL season. So if you were watching the red zone, it was like, hell yeah, football's back. Like, oh my God, this guy's scoring a touchdown. And then it's like, and we have the first interception of the season, and it throws you over to the Browns game with Baker snapping the football. And it's like, oh shit.
Well, you know, I'm surprised because I mean, people who listen to this podcast will not like the fact that I see football in this day and age, you know, as in this part of my life as through the lens of fantasy. But all the same, I believed in Nick Chubb. You know, I think Nick Chubb, and you know, Nick Chubb was so talented through the first half of last season. And the only reason he's not as good of a fantasy running back now is that there's Kareem Hunt, who's stealing away, rushes from him and goal line rushes. So, are the Browns lacking in talent as a result of that? What the hell is going on with them?
So Reese, I know you've been a noted Baker fan, but I think it all comes back to the quarterback play. You know, when you have a quarterback who's throwing interceptions and he just, you know. Eli Manning was able to get the ball to Odell, but it's something that Baker just doesn't seem capable of doing, which really doesn't make sense to me. You know, no disrespect to Eli Manning, you know, he's a legend in his own right, 2 Super Bowl champions, but you would think that, you know, Odell, do we agree? Like, you know, he's a great receiver, right? He should be able to at least get the ball to him. You know, he gets the ball to Jarvis Landry, but it just feels like they just don't have any chemistry, and this is another season where I know it's only week 1 and they play against a great Ravens team, but not a good start for them, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And as a Baker fan, I think I like to think I hold my guy accountable. And I'm not even like a huge Baker fan. I've just stuck up for him in the past and stuff. I think he can still succeed at the NFL level, but like, I think at this point we kind of know that what we've got with Baker, he's not going to be he's not going to be a superstar quarterback who's going to, lead the league in passing yards and lead the league in touchdowns and stuff like that. He's not going to do what he did at Oklahoma, right? And I think one of the things that I've loved about Baker the most is his just his bulldog attitude, his fighter attitude, being on the bench everywhere and stuff like that, and just everyone doubting him and stuff. But it's he's got to do, if he wants to succeed in the NFL, he has to do the hardest thing in his life, and he has to just completely take the backseat. He's got to just like you guys said, they have a freaking incredible rushing game there. They have good talent on the outside. I don't see why a team like this, like you said, what's with Odell Beckham Jr., it's clearly not working out with him. So use the trade bait, get freaking solid pieces elsewhere and stuff like that. And Baker as a person needs to just understand that he's not going to be the guy, and he needs to take the back role, and he needs to understand how to become a game manager in the NFL, and just one of those guys who, okay, if I'm going to throw 17 times today, I'm going to throw 17 times, but I'm going to complete 15 of them, and I'm going to complete 15 of them for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns and a win.
Right.
That's a solid stat line. You don't need to be a fucking superstar, and I feel
you don't need to be Aaron Rodgers to get the win.
Exactly. And everything around Baker is him trying to be that, and they still have a solid core around him that he can take advantage of if he learns how to just slow the fuck down and take a step back.
Right. And when you said that, I thought of Gardner Minshew right away. A younger quarterback than Baker. He threw 20 passes. He was 19 for 20. Made some plays with his legs. He's not trying to do much, and they got the win against the Colts. So there's no reason why he can't be someone like that.
Yeah, that's
what I've been saying to Russell Westbrook through my computer screen for the last couple of years. Reese, that take, by the way, I would have given you my Tony Reali +1.
Thank you.
That was a well put take, man.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
But yeah, so you look at the Browns, right? And obviously week 1 overreactions. We don't want to get too carried away because it's week 1. But they play the Bengals tomorrow, which is a huge divisional game already, because if the Browns go down 0-2 in the division, another primetime loss, it sucks the confidence out of your team. And you're playing against a young quarterback on the other side, Joe Burrow, another one of you guys, Reese. So that's, I think, a huge matchup tomorrow. Am I being a little carried away by saying it's a massive game for them, or what do you think?
I don't think it's an overreaction to anything that we're saying right now, because Odell Beckham Jr. is on the freaking trade block right now after week 1. This is a situation where internally they're not freaking the hell out, but they realize what they have in their team and what they don't have. And what they don't have is a connection between Baker and Odell, and they got to do something about that. So I think it's not a must win, but in terms of this Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry, this Browns team that we're seeing, it's a must win, because if they lose this game, then they're going to do everything they can to ship Odell out of town. And then we're talking about a little bit of a new chapter with the Cleveland Browns. So I'm not going to say a week 2 game is a must win ever, but yeah, if they lose, then I think there's going to be changes for sure.
Yeah. And last year we blamed a lot of their problems on Freddie Kitchens, rightfully so, but you have Kevin Stefanski, who's supposed to be, an offensive mind. He, had great years with Kirk Cousins. So at this point, you run out of people to blame. Sometimes you have to just move on at some point.
Yeah, 100%. And hopefully Kevin Stefanski isn't another Freddie Kitchens story. Hopefully he's as good as they say. But week 1 didn't look good for anybody on that team. So
right. So before we head to the fantasy section, Reese, I wanted to do a quick Broncos AFC West check-in. Had a tough loss to the Titans on Monday night. What did you like and what did you dislike from your Broncos?
Honestly, even though that was a a really tough loss. I came away from it like pretty damn happy, especially after the press conference with Vic Fangio. I came out of it pretty happy because like coming in with some major defensive, like Von Miller obviously going down was just a gut punch, because I thought that we were going to be pretty decent contenders this year and at least be able to make some noise. And then when your key guy on defense goes down, it was pretty heartbreaking. But then our defense came out and, I mean, they looked pretty good. So I was really happy about that. And then we come in with a new offensive coordinator, Pat Shermer from the Giants. And he came in and honestly, like, the offensive play calling was the best I've seen since Peyton Manning was running the damn offense. So, like, with the injuries on defense and them still playing well, and the offensive play calling, like, looking real good with, two of our top guys going out, and then Philip Lindsay going out in the middle of the game, and two of our top wide receivers being out, and Philip Lindsay going out in the middle of the game. It's like, I think there's a lot of stuff for the Broncos to work on. But for this specific game, Vic Fangio blew it with the timeouts.
Yeah,
so,
that was a really head-scratching decision.
Yeah, and it pissed me off. I was frustrated about it, but he came out in the press conference, and it was somebody obviously asked him about it, and he took 100% of the blame. He said it was on him and all of that stuff. So I'm like, you know what? With everything good that we did in the game, and that, in my opinion, probably being the reason we lost, because I think that Drew Lock probably could have got Brandon McManus within at least a 60-yard field goal, and we would have sent him out there for a 60-yarder. Brandon McManus would have gotten the green light at that point. So I don't know. I think it really just came down to that timeout decision, and our head coach addressed it. He knows that he fucked up, and he said, okay, let's move on from it. So I think, I don't know. It's a lot of good stuff to build on. It's kind of just, you just dust your hands, move on, on to next week.
Sean, give it anything to add from that Monday night game?
Yeah, the timeout thing threw me as well, and that was a real head scratcher, like Reese said. I also, I wonder what you guys think more than me having a take on this, of the fact that if Gostkowski converts more of those kicks, that it wouldn't have been as close as the score looks.
Yeah, exactly. How happy would I be about our defense, just about the Broncos in general, if he had completed even, two of those kicks?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and it just shows how easily these things can be construed.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how happy I am walking away from this win, and 3 weeks from now we could be winless, and I could be what the hell when it was right there in front of me. But yeah, I mean, yeah, that's a great point, because especially with the Titans last year and all their kicking problems, it's like, what the hell? Like, they signed freaking Gostkowski, one of the best kickers in the league, and they still deal with this crap. So,
and what's supposed to be a very friendly kicking environment, right? Denver's altitude.
Yeah, but I mean, those problems were, it was tough. It was like that first one was one of those weird little chip shots that I like, even when it was lined up, it was just lined up weird, and he just pushed it, right? And then the second one gets blocked, and it was just like, that's just unfortunate, right? So then on the third one, you're walking up there and you're like, okay, shit, I've missed these first two. I really gotta focus on this one. And then you just overthink that one. It's like, I didn't think he even had a shot on the last one, but
he missed
broke my heart. Yeah.
The other thing is Philip Lindsay's injury. Is he going to be okay?
They're saying it's a turf toe, and I mean, obviously Broncos are going to come out saying it's nothing to worry about, but I mean, anytime I think you have an injury like that, which is, I think turf toe is almost, way less severe, but it's almost like a hamstring where it could just keep coming back and keep coming back. So you don't need to be on turf to have turf toe. So
right. So before we wrap things up, I wanted to do a fantasy segment. The way it's gonna work is that we're each gonna just talk about all our teams. If some of us are in multiple leagues, and just see our record for the week. And we're going to talk about one player that we love this week and one player that we hate. So, Shoaib, why don't you go ahead and start off?
Well, you said that tomorrow's game for the Browns is going to be a massive game. Perhaps it is also a massive game for me for my fantasy team because it's if Joe Mixon turns out another disappointing performance tomorrow, then it's going to be a life jacket time for a lot of us Mixon managers. That's Yeah, I love this guy. I think he got me to the championship game last year against the other Vola Brett brother, and I took him. Just I think I waited like 3 seconds before I drafted him in the first round this year. So him doing poorly this week was a real pain in the ass. It was also tough to see. Basically, my whole team really didn't show up. Brandon Cook struggled, but one thing I did learn is that the power of trusting your gut remains in fantasy football. It always remains because there's none of the experts. People love to say to me whenever I talk about still caring as much as I do about fantasy football, people love to say that, oh, you can just look up expert opinions now. That's not true because experts can't account. Experts can create rankings, right, for each week, but they really can't account for player versus player arguments. There's just too many player versus player permutations. You know what I mean? So everybody could have a guy like Brandon Cooks 20 spots up above in the rankings above Sammy Watkins, right? But if I look at these matchups and I see that Sammy Watkins is playing Houston and he could get a lot of targets, right? Like if there's a week to play your boom bust wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4, it's this one. Then you just go with him, even if he's ranked 20 spots lower than the guy you are starting. I made that mistake. I would have been plus 15 if I went with Watkins, but not too bad. I scored 90 points, and just gotta look ahead to next week. It's sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to butt in because that's an incredible fantasy football take right there. About like trusting your gut right there and about like no honestly because like as a guy who watches, like I listen to podcasts, like I like to do my research, I like to hear what the experts are talking about, and like at the end of the day, like not one of these guys is looking at your team, not one of these guys understands, okay, yeah, they might have this guy ranked 20 spots above the guy that you're looking at, but it's like, but is that guy your wide receiver 2? Is that guy your wide receiver 3? Is that guy you're looking at this for a flex option versus a running back? It's like you really, yeah, wow. That Shomek, I'm gonna win the championship based off of that shit right there, bro.
I shouldn't have given it up.
No, dude, not at all. I'm gonna go reset my lineup for this week.
Shomek, do you have a
well? I mean, and I've always found. One more thing is I've always found that trusting your gut leaves you happy at the end of the day. Like if Mixon does poorly this year and it turns out I should have drafted Dalvin Cook, who I passed on, or I think Edwards-Helaire was taken one pick ahead of him, but I can't really remember who else I passed on to draft Mixon, but definitely I think Henry was also taken. I think you were ahead of me, Dev, right? You drafted 4th and you took Henry.
I had Henry 4th, yeah.
Yeah, so there's definitely a running back or two. Maybe Kamara was still on the board. Who knows? And I picked Mixon instead. At the end of the day, if he doesn't do well, then you can blame yourself, but you can walk away knowing that you made a pick, that you wanted to make, like I would have if I plugged Sammy Watkins in this week. But listening to the experts and then losing is way more bitter, and it just sucks. And
right.
If I drafted if you draft 2 people tell you to draft, even though you have your own red flags in your heart and it doesn't work out, it just doesn't. It's the worst feeling in the world. So it's not worth doing.
Yeah.
Such a great point.
So do you have a player from week 1 that you loved and someone you hated?
Well, I'm pleased that Matt Ryan seems to be having yet another. He seems to be having a start to a year. I don't want to get ahead of myself. It's week 1. But you just kind of there's like a good Matt Ryan year and a bad Matt Ryan year as someone who's had Matt Ryan on his team like maybe 5 or 6 years now, 5 or 6 different years. And it seems like from what we saw in week 1, it's a good Matt Ryan year. And that's if it is, then I'm so proud to call that guy my quarterback 1. Fun fact: my fantasy team name is Damn Decent, and it's because during the Super Bowl between the Patriots and oh man, I'm blanking here, with the Panthers when the Patriots came back, that was the year they came back from 28-7.
Falcons.
Oh, the Falcons, right?
Yeah.
I'm out of energy today. I'm out of bandwidth, but
it's the whiskey.
It's the whiskey. It's obvious that it was the Falcons because my point is about Matt Ryan. That year we had a Super Bowl party, and I got very drunk at the Super Bowl party, and I kept going up to the same people in the party who didn't watch football, pointing at the screen and saying, "That guy Matt Ryan, he's a damn decent guy." Which is why my team name is now Damn Decent, because one year I drafted Matt Ryan. This year I drafted Matt Ryan. I got to stick with Damn Decent.
I actually love that, dude. That
was a great story.
Yeah, dude. That's a great way of like getting your fantasy football name too.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, like, I was in my head. I was like, I'm assuming he's talking about the Falcons. Why else would he bring up Matt Ryan? And I was like, wait. Yeah. I mean, they did play the Panthers like years ago in like 2003. So I'm like, I'm really curious to see where this story goes.
Yeah, when you brought up the Panthers, I was like, whoa, we're going back right now.
Want to take me back to the ripe young age of 7 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Reese, how did your teams do this week?
Yeah, I mean.
Sorry to cut you off. Shomik, is there a player that you hated this week?
Brandon Cooks. We'll go with Brandon Cooks. You can put him down.
Brandon Cooks.
Dude, fuck.
Yeah, I mean,
Cooks,
I don't know. Just my whole team didn't show up. Well, it's a bad week to ask me because there wasn't one player that lost me this week. It was just it was a dumb week all around for my roster.
Got it. All right, sorry, Reese. Sorry to cut you off.
No, dude, it's okay. It's fine. No, I think I'll keep it with, if we're gonna do a little fantasy segment whenever we talk football, I think I'll keep it with the league that we're all in and stuff like that. So a player I hated was Mark Ingram being a freaking bum this week and putting up a whopping 2.9 points in our league. Let's see his stat line. 10 rushing attempts for 29 yards.
Ooh.
I'm just gonna.
That's not what you want.
Ooh.
I'm just gonna let that stat line just sink in for a second. 10 for 29. Okay, so that's the guy that I hate. I have to throw that one out there. But lucky for him, the guy that I love was my other running back. My boy, my tiger, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Nice.
Going off for almost 20 points in his NFL debut. And
wow.
the first of many big days for my guy. So I'm still looking for a running back though. So if you guys got anybody to shop, just let me know. Okay. Because Mark Ingram's a fucking bum.
So Reese, how many leagues are you in this year?
So I'm normally in 3. I have our yearly league that we've been doing since 2010, and then I run my family league, a little 10-team league, and then I'm in a 12-team league with my San Diego friends. But then this year, Sam Kim reached out to me to play in his league again, which I played in like once a couple years ago. So I'm in 4, which I never advise. I normally keep 3 as my limit, but 4 this year. What about you?
I'm in 3. Did you have a winning record this week, or 2-2, or how'd you do?
2-2. Yeah, I got really lucky in our league. I won. I got a dub, but I only put up 84 points off the back of Mark Ingram's 2.9 points. So, but I got a dub. So I was 2-2. I split down the middle, but I think I got a lot to work on.
Reese also won the I can't pronounce his name, so I apologize to Mr. Hines. Nyheim Hines. You won the Nyheim Hines sweepstakes, paying $39 for him.
He beat me by $6, which I was.
Wait, okay. So did you bet on him? Okay, that's good to know because I bet $39 because of this is my first ever year doing the fab budget. We've never done that in our league, and Dev, I know you have experience with that, but this is my first ever year, so I had to call Case like a week, like, and just be like, dude, like, like you need to tell me how this shit works. Like, I need a full, like, we were on the phone for like an hour. He was giving me like a full breakdown, just talking
Nice.
it over. And when it came down to that whole thing, I knew that Shiv needed a running back because of Le'Veon Bell going down. So I was like, okay, like, I want Hines, but Shiv's more desperate than me. Like, you know what? I'm not gonna pay more than $40, right? And then Shiv drops $100 on Malcolm Brown.
Yeah, can we talk about that?
Jaw dropping.
$100. That's half of our
decision.
damn budget. We have a $200 budget for all of our listeners, and yeah, that was
That was definitely something I woke up to, and I was like, whoa.
yeah. I rolled over at 7:00. I'm kind of like reading Bleacher Report articles, and then I was like, oh my god, like Nyheim Hines, and it says that I got him, so I had to see like, what did Shiv bet? You know, who did Shiv get? And I was like, oh my god, this guy really just fucking did that.
I'm surprised that Shiv didn't like. I mean, I didn't know that Malcolm Brown would be the guy that Shiv dropped 105 on. I mean, if anything, you could split the difference between Nyheim Hines and Malcolm Brown. I think both are like. I don't think Malcolm Brown's a sure thing to get the most carries.
No, he's definitely going to be splitting carries with Cam Akers.
I mean, and Darrell Henderson. Like, Malcolm Brown's a questionable guy in a 3-man backfield, whereas Nyheim Hines is the for sure reception guy in a 2-man backfield. Right?
We saw how Phillip Rivers used Eckler last year, so.
Dude, that's what I told Shiv. I just brought up my text message with Shiv because I literally texted him that earlier. I was like, bro, I'm paying Nyheim Hines as Austin Eckler in a Colts jersey, you know? But I texted him. I said, hey, I'm not going to blast you in the group message, but $100 on Malcolm Brown. And all he sends back is a one-word text message that says, desperate. And I was like, yeah, dude, I know that. You just spent $100 on Malcolm Brown. Yeah, that was brutal. That was a good way to start off our free. Hey, Showmake, if you say anything in the group and like at the end of it's a little too late, but if you say anything before the next week, that's got to be your thing. That our first ever fab budget signing was him dropping $100 on Malcolm.
That was like, you couldn't have scripted that better. That's like, it's like that's such an obvious thing looking back on it, that Shiv would have spent like half his entire budget on a somewhat believable running back after week 1.
No, but the best part is in 2 weeks, Shiv's going to be spending money on another running back because Malcolm Brown's not going to do it for him.
Yeah. Some questionable decisions for sure.
Oh, I love it. All right, wait, Dev, did we hear your love and hate?
No, we haven't. So I went 1-2 this week. Not what you want. You know, you never want to lose more games than you win, but it was a pretty tough week. I started off the day really well with Josh Allen playing really well for me in my friend's league. So we have the money league that we've been playing for the last couple of years with our friend Thaddeus's league. So in that league, I was a little desperate, you know, and I dropped $100 of my fantasy budget, but it was spread out over 3 players, not 1 player.
Okay, all right, that's better.
Thank you.
That's better.
That's understandable.
I was desperate for somebody, so I dropped $50 on Nyheim Hines. I spent like 15 on MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then I spent Carson Wentz was dropped for some reason. Our friend Brian that we mentioned before, he dropped Carson Wentz for whatever reason, and you know, I have Matthew Stafford, who's my starting quarterback right now, but you know, when you have a quarterback like Carson Wentz, you know, I had the opportunity, so I picked him up for like $20. You know, who knows, he might be trade bait sometime in the future, or he might take over the starting role if Stafford doesn't get it done. But yeah, in that league, I just have so many injuries. I have Kenny Golladay, Cortland Sutton. I had Marlon Mack, who's out for the year. I had Jarvis, who's hurt too. Deebo Samuel's on the IR. So just injuries all over the place, which is why I had to drop money. But yeah, that being said, my love and hate is also going to be from that league. Sorry not to break it from our league, but I don't really have anybody to talk about there. But yeah, my love is Josh Jacobs. I have him in 2 leagues, and he put up the highest running back performance, I believe, of anyone of that week. 33 points, 2 touchdowns. So he was great for me last year. And he already got off to a great start. I'm really looking for him to catch more passes so he can really take over as an RB1. And the hate is someone that we've mentioned before, but Nick Chubb. He got me a good old 5 points. That's not what you want for your first round pick, and not at all. Especially when you had so many other talent on the board like Kenyon Drake, Aaron Jones. So I really need a big week from him tomorrow. And the sad thing is, in that league, I have 3 Browns. I have Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Jarvis Landry. And with all my injuries, it's really looking like I might have to start 3 Browns tomorrow, which is concerning, but we'll see.
That's more than concerning, bro. They looked awful week 1. They put up 6 points.
Yeah.
It's okay. In one of my leagues, I have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Devin Singletary in my starting lineup for next week. So putting 3 Bills in your lineup has never been a recipe for success in fantasy football. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I mean, going to your Broncos, Reese, I'm just glad Melvin Gordon was able to punch in that touchdown that he did, because otherwise it would have been a much bleaker. We're talking about how simple things like switch up your outlook. It would be a much bleaker moment right now if Melvin Gordon hadn't at least gotten a score, because I think I'm not sure that any other players besides Gordon and Kelsey, who's kind of the Lone Ranger, actually elite player on this team that's turning onto my team. A-Rob didn't score, and he's having contract remorse, and Chark had a bad Chark week, which I knew when I drafted him, but I waited too late to take my wide receiver 2. It's gonna be a tough year. It's not gonna be an easy path back to the week before
Back to
Christmas.
The finals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fantasy, it's a very abusive relationship. We do this every year. A lot of us at times had just wondering. There was definitely a moment, like 4 o'clock on Sunday, where I was just extremely upset how my team was performing, because I was staring at 2 losses.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. It really hurts. It really destroys my whole week when especially when I lose matchups I could have won. If I had lost by less than 15 and I could have started Sammy Watkins, I might not have done this podcast today.
Oh,
Just didn't show up.
I'd still be drinking the Tullamore Dew, but I wouldn't be in a place to be recorded.
It'd be in a much more depressing state.
All right, man. I'd like to thank you guys for coming on the show today. Had a great talk about the NBA, NFL, and fantasy. I hope we can do this NFL thing every week. I think that'd be great to check in on how the NFL the league's doing and how everyone's doing in fantasy.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us, man.
Picks for Denver Lakers game 1. Which team wins and by how many?
I'm gonna say Lakers win by 12 plus.
Don't do this to me. I think the Lakers sneak by with like a 5-point victory.
I was gonna say the same thing. I think the Lakers win by 5. I think the Nuggets give them a lot of problems in the 4th.
Yeah, I think Jamal Murray. I don't know why. I know Lonzo's not there, but he had that like little bit of a rivalry with Lonzo for a little bit, and I just think Jamal Murray is just gonna come out just ready to fuck us up. Like Jokic doesn't fucking know where Los Angeles is. He doesn't give a shit. We're just another team on the map, but like I'm scared about Murray right now, honestly.
You guys have any picks any picks for Celtics Heat game 2?
I think Boston wins by like that's. I think this is gonna be the one comfortable win of the series. I think Boston wins by 10 points.
I agree.
Sure, Boston.
I agree about the Murray take though. I think Murray and besides Butler, perhaps Murray's just been the. I would pick him against any team right now the way he's playing.
Yeah, Jokic is going to have a solid series probably, but I just think Murray's going to come out with something to prove.
Yeah, I definitely am worried about him because we've had trouble with guards all season with wing players, so you know, I think he'll have a good game. How about any picks for Bengals Broncos tomorrow or Bengals Browns? Sorry.
Bengals Browns. Honestly, I think Bengals. I think Joe Burrow comes out and gets a win. I think it's panic time in Cleveland on Friday morning.
Yeah, I can't believe Randy Bullock missed that field goal. Then he just grabbed his hand right after.
Yeah, I mean, do you guys? If I see Randy Bullock kick off the game tomorrow night, I'm gonna be pissed off. That guy totally played us.
I need at least a score from Joe Mixon tomorrow to keep me from the cliff on taking him in the first round. Let's see how this goes.
I'm staring at the barrel of 3 Browns players on my starting lineup, so I'm gonna need a high scoring game for sure.
Hey, so I don't know. Are we all on the Bengals bandwagon for this Joe Burrow win though in prime time?
Yeah, I mean they can win as long as it's like a 35-30 game.
Yeah,
I'm on the Joe Burrow bandwagon overall at large. I think they're going to be a good team this year. That's why I picked Mixon. I think they're going to have a good offense.
Reese, don't you have AJ Green too?
I have AJ Green. Did you guys see that freaking final drive? That 2-minute drill?
Yeah,
Holy shit!
That was LSU, Joe. Tiger.
Yeah, I think. I don't think you're. I don't think you're going to be disappointed with that decision, Shomek, being all in on the Joe Burrow train.
See how it goes. Playing with house money here. I made the championship game last year.
This year's all gravy, huh?
Yeah, the investment in this year's season was the championship game, the second place winnings from last year. That's
what
reinvest in fantasy.
What a way to be able to look at it, dude.
Yeah, dude, I'm still plus 40 if it doesn't go right this year.
Hey, you robbed us all of a Vola Bowl, bro.
The Vola Bowl.
I did.
The Vola Bowl.
Maybe is it the one chance we were able to? Is that the one chance we would have gotten to see a Vola Bowl in this era?
Yeah, dude.
Case is really having a moment right now. Honestly, Case has won twice in the last 3 years or 4 years. No one's listening at this point, so I can just talk about Case without giving it context. Case had a great week 1, even though that Thaddeus game was the marquee matchup. And then I have to face the fucker. What was that?
I think Case won by less than a point.
Yeah, it was decimal points. Yeah, and the Broncos defense didn't show up for him, but he still won. And then I have to face this guy this week, so it's not good. It's not good. Case is having a moment, and Reese is gonna have to work hard to make a Vola Bowl happen.
Yeah, dude, that guy scares the fuck out of me, bro. He's easily most likely to get the 3 rings.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather him than the other 2 guys, if I'm gonna be honest.
Yeah, because it's them 3, right?
Yeah,
them 3 are all at 2, and then
you got one.
Yeah, me, Shiv, and who?
Nadu has one, right?
Nadu and VJ are the inactive managers that have won a championship.
Can we take this conversation off the pod?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I forgot we were still on the podcast. Yeah, let's sign this off.
All right. I'd like to thank you guys again for being on the show. Remember, you can follow us on all of our social pages, DG Sports Podcast, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube.
Some guy's just like working out like, who the fuck is VJ, man?
You can reach us questions on our email, dgsportspod@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys, and we'll be back soon.